I'm Rebecca Bruner, and I have been on the board at the museum on Main for a long time. And today we're talking with Bob Williams, who has been a longtime Pleasanton resident and is very famous in Pleasanton for directing the Pleasanton Community Band. And you've done that for how many years, Bob?
Oh my. Well, the band is 47 years. 40 of them have been mine.
Okay, all right. Who was the first director?
A man named Jerry Lipinski. He was band director at Wells Middle School in Dublin, and he was recruited by Charlotte Severin.
Okay.
And Mike, wow, the director of adult education at that time. His last name will come to me shortly, but they recruited Jerry Lipinski to do it, and he was good for the first 3 years, and then he moved on to Apple Country. What's the big city up there with a P?
Up in Oregon or up in?
Pleasanton, California.
Oh, near Sacramento, you mean?
No, it's up on the coast, the direction of the coast.
Oh,
Anyway.
I thought there was Apple Hill in that. Anyway, so he moved away.
He moved up, became an administrator and Sebastopol.
Oh,
He was a superintendent of schools. And then when he left, I took over the band for a couple of years. I had been a horn player since the band was in its first year. And when Jerry left, they promoted me to conductor. And I did that for several years. And then I needed to take a break for other things that had to be done. And Jay Roberts was the conductor. He had been a band junior high school teacher in Livermore.
okay.
I think he was at Junction. Anyway. And then after a few years, he left town and went to Elk Grove and became the music director and started the Elk Grove Community Band.
Okay.
And so they encouraged me to come back.
Okay.
And I've been there ever since. So,
And you and I think you play French horn, right?
yes.
And that's what I played in high school.
Ah,
Yeah, I love the French horn.
yeah. It's now it's just called a horn.
Oh,
The International Horn Society decided, 10 or 15 years ago, that there was nothing French about the instrument at all.
Okay.
It was a German horn.
oh,
And this started as a hunting horn, a Waldhorn, and in Germany, that's where it was first used in orchestras. And then some Frenchmen heard it and decided they wanted it. So some French orchestras took over, incorporated it into their personnel. And then the British heard the French playing it, and the British said, "Oh, we like the sound of that French horn."
and that's how it got its name.
So the International Horn Society decided that's all phony history. It's a German beginning, but it's just a horn, and it's the only instrument that's really just a horn.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I didn't know that. So where did you grow up, Bob?
I grew up in Norristown, Pennsylvania, the gateway to Valley Forge, 7 miles away, a nice bike ride on a Sunday afternoon. And it's 17 miles from Philadelphia. So it's right in that southeastern corner where everything historical happened, and I grew up with it. My mother was not a regular member, but her family was all entitled to be members of the Daughters of the American Revolution because of family history that was involved in the revolution. 25 years I was there, and then started moving away. First to New York State to go to school, and from there to New Mexico, and from there to Oakland, California, and here I am.
And what got you to California?
The salary.
Okay.
I was teaching in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and losing money every month, and found out there was a job available in Oakland, so I came.
Losing money.
Well, they weren't paying me as much as it cost to live.
Really?
Really. That was
Okay.
1970.
Okay.
Strange time, strange place. I enjoyed being there. I would have stayed. Skiing was good from Halloween to Easter. Everything was fine. Great place to live, but you need money.
Yes, yes. So you found out about Oakland and then went there and
Right. I was there for 8 years
as a music teacher.
as a music teacher at King Estates Junior High School. I was there during that marvelous time when Martin Luther King was, Martin Luther, jeez, wow. I connect them because Marcus Foster was the superintendent of schools,
Okay.
and Marcus Foster was assassinated.
Oh,
And Marcus Foster was definitely a black man. It was the Symbionese Liberation Army
yes.
that killed him.
Really?
Yeah, they
And the Symbionese Liberation Army also kidnapped Patty Hearst.
right.
So did they kill him before they kidnapped her? Or?
Yes,
Oh, and why did they kill him?
because he was doing things that didn't agree with the Army's desires,
Like,
and he was a black man,
okay.
and
Because there weren't that many people in this army. I mean, they said it was an army, but it really wasn't
no, it was
like a handful of people or whatever, right?
little clique.
Yeah.
But
Did they find out that, did they prosecute the army for doing that?
I don't remember really.
Okay.
I think they tried. I think they found out who it was, and we'd have to look it up. We'd have to Google what happened to him.
Okay. But interesting. So you were there when he was
Yeah.
assassinated. Oh, wow.
He had a great influence on how I dealt with the children of Oakland,
Okay.
whom he made sure we knew that they were not spoiled goods. They were all worthwhile human beings.
Oh,
And that was an attitude that he had to create and make grow. And he was doing a great job.
may I ask, at that time, were many of the teachers white?
Yes,
Okay, so he was trying to teach you some about how he believed in his culture because I would guess a lot of your students, many were white, but many were black?
predominantly black.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay. What a nice attitude.
yeah.
Yeah,
They're all good goods. And it's interesting, one of my students at Sunnyside Elementary, I think that was it, was son of, or children of Dave Melander.
Dave Melander.
And they moved
That name is familiar, but,
to Pleasanton
oh,
about a year after I did.
okay.
And Dave was, he was equally famous as I in Pleasanton. And he's also one of the community of patriots. And he and Dave and Hildegard Melander were great supporters of the band.
Oh,
Right.
great.
And we were known to each other for more years than we both lived here.
Oh.
So that was interesting.
So you taught in Oakland, but you lived in Pleasanton?
Yes. Yeah, when we moved from Albuquerque, we had a real estate agent showing us places where we might be interested in living. And of course, my wife said, "Oh, well, we heard that Walnut Creek is a good place to live, and that's just a short drive." And he said, "You're a teacher in Oakland. You can't afford to live in Walnut Creek. So let me show you some places in the East Bay." And he showed us a few places in Dublin, and then Pleasanton. And right away, the town looked more like a town. And we found a house in Valley Trails. I think it was the next to the last house that sold in Valley Trails.
Oh,
There were
okay.
two vacant.
So it was the end of the building of Valley
Yes.
Trails.
Yeah, we were looking in the fall of '71, and in fact, it was Thanksgiving recess, and Valley Trails was all built out, but 2 houses had not yet been sold. So we negotiated. The real estate agent who was showing us around could not sell us that house because it was new construction.
It was a builder, okay.
Right. So we had to negotiate with Ponderosa Homes
Yeah.
and their realtor. So anyway, we moved in, and I've been in the house now for 50 years and 6 months. And
Wow.
I'm going to stay there for as many more as I can.
Good for you. Yeah. It's nice. Yeah. So what did you like about Pleasanton?
Oh my. Well, it had that perfect small town feel. You could walk anywhere. You could walk to a store. I mean, that was 3/4 of a mile or less to either one of 2 supermarkets at that time. And it was only a 2-mile walk to downtown, and it was a pleasant walk. The streets were good, and when you got downtown, you felt like, wow, this is a real hometown. You know, it's always been that way, even, well, for 50 years. And it was, yeah, it was comfortable. It was pleasant. The weather was great, still is. And anything you wanted to do, you could do. You want to go to snow country, it's an hour and a half drive at the most. You want to go to the ocean, it's less than an hour.
Yeah.
And the big cities were all around.
Yeah.
San Jose, San Francisco, 2 great symphony orchestras, and the Oakland Symphony. So there's always something to do, and this was a nice central place.
Yeah. And it is a cute, quaint downtown.
Yes.
And it's so nice that they've kept so many of the old buildings.
Definitely.
It's made it nice. So you came to Pleasanton, and then I think you had told me at one other time that you joined the Livermore Symphony.
Yes. Well, the first month, the same month that I moved in, January '72, I went to a concert by the Livermore Symphony in January. They, at that time, they every program they played, they did twice. Saturday night in Livermore and Sunday afternoon in Pleasanton.
Oh.
So I went to a Sunday afternoon concert in Amador Theater, and were very much impressed and pleased because I had played in community orchestras since 1948. Wherever I lived, there was an orchestra that needed a horn player, and I played. So I was ripe for something to do. And when the concert was over, I ran up to the stage and grabbed a hold of Art Barnes, the conductor, and I said, "Do you need a horn player?" And he said, "Do you have Tuesday evenings free?" So yes, on both counts. And that was the start.
Oh, good.
And I played there until June of this year. I told them was my final performance. So 50 years with Livermore Symphony. It was a good career.
Yeah.
But the lip is older than it needs to be to play a horn.
Yeah, it's hard to, the horn isn't an easy instrument to play,
That depends
they say.
on the person. For me, it was an easy instrument. I fell in love with it in 1944 when I first got one. The junior high school band director, I came up from the elementary school as a trumpeter, and he looked around the room and he said, "We have too many trumpeters, but I have a horn." And I said, "I'll try it." And that was the end of that trumpeter career. There was always a community band or a community orchestra that needed a horn player, and I always played.
Okay. But now, Pleasanton, when you came, did not have a community band.
No,
So how did that get started?
where's Charlotte Severin when you need her? In 1975 or 74 even, the Bicentennial Celebration Committee in Pleasanton was looking for projects to spend their money, and Charlotte said, "Well, there's a bandstand in Wayside Park, but we don't have a band." So she got together with adult education, and Mike's name hasn't come to me yet, and she discussed forming a band. And so the Pleasanton Bicentennial Committee did that. They hired Jerry Lipinski and set up a rehearsal schedule at Amador High School Band Room and announced for musicians who were interested in playing in a community band. And there were probably 40 people who showed up.
Okay.
And they started rehearsing in April of 75. Right, because their goal was to perform at the bicentennial celebration in 1976 when the bicentennial started.
Okay.
So they rehearsed starting in April, and then they gave a concert, probably a spring concert in Amador Theater. And then when the summer was opened up, they started giving Sunday afternoon concerts in Wayside Park.
Every Sunday afternoon?
Not every, but one a month at least.
Oh, okay.
And it was one of those concerts that I heard the band and I said, "Oh, I missed them." So I joined the band during its first 6 months, again as a horn player.
Okay.
And that gave me two things to do. Tuesday and Thursday nights, their music, forget it, nothing else.
Besides all your other things with teaching and working and family and...
Right.
Yeah. So in the band, you've been at it for so many years. What age would you say is your youngest player has ever been?
Oh, well, when the band started, Jerry brought into the band several of his junior high school band members.
Oh.
So it started out with some pretty young folks in there.
Yeah.
And they stayed, even when Jerry left. So if they still lived in town, many of them stayed on with the band.
Okay.
And we've had players as young as high school. Over the years, we developed a good connection with Joe Bonfiglio, clarinet player, who taught every clarinet player that was available. And he became a soloist. He became a teacher of our whole clarinet section. And every summer he would get a bunch of his students. "You're not in high school. What are you doing this summer?" "Well, come play with the band."
Oh.
So we've always had some high school students in the summers. They're too busy during a school year.
Yeah.
And we don't even think about that. But the youngest now would be players who just graduated from college.
Okay.
And they're still living local.
In the area. Okay.
So they they play. The average age is a person who's been working, had children, children moved out, empty nest, what am I going to do? Oh, I'll pick up the trumpet and play again. So we have a lot of that. Middle-aged is the middle age of the band.
How about the oldest member who?
Well, when Don Lambert left last month, that left me being the oldest.
Okay.
So
How old was Don?
he was, I don't know if I dare say, he was a couple of years older than I.
Okay. What did he play?
Saxophone and clarinet. And he was a great asset to the band because he also was very computer literate and very musically computer literate. I could give him a piece of music and say, Don, I need this arranged in a different key for the following instruments, and a week later it was done.
Wow.
He turned the wrong part into the right part. And he even did that as recently as last week. He handed me a part that it was originally a D-flat piccolo part. We needed to be a C piccolo and flute part. And he arranged the whole thing down up a half step. And so now that piece is ready to play.
What a great asset.
Yes, and he'll still do it as long as he's alive. He'll do that for us, but he has left the band.
Okay.
Is all of this information important? Wait.
Well, it's very interesting what are who makes up the band?
Yeah.
I think that's very interesting. Yeah.
Well, I think the most interesting member of the band was Bob Butler.
Why?
Well, because we followed his career from the planning commission to the city council to the mayor. And then to private citizen. And he was most important to me because, he started playing as a trombone player.
Okay.
And then he was also playing timpani in the Livermore Symphony. And when the band acquired some timpani, he said, well, I'll be your timpanist. So he moved from trombone to timpani. Occasionally he would come back if we needed a tuba and we didn't have a timpani part. And he also played bassoon for a couple of years. But the year that Oakland City Schools music program kind of had a serious decline and they no longer needed me, I announced to the band on a Thursday night, I seem to have just become unemployed, so I'm looking for something to do. And at the end of that rehearsal, Bob Butler came up to me and said, Bob, come down to GE Valicitos tomorrow, and I'll set up an appointment with, should I mention names?
Yeah, you can.
With Joe Tenorio, who was the lab chief. He said, you can, I think I know that Joe is looking for workers. So, as it turned out, it was a good interview with Joe, an enjoyable day at GE Valicitos, and it turned into 18 years of enjoyment.
Great, yeah.
So I went from being a musician to being a metallurgist.
And still being a musician in the evenings.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
You did.
I compared what I did there with the same thing with a piece of music. I get a piece of music, the band wants to play it, I look at it, I analyze it, I decide how to present it, and then we play it. I go to work, they hand me a piece of material, they want it analyzed, they want pictures of it, so I do that, and then I write a report, and they understand about that piece of material. So it's the same process.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Mentally, it's just different material.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So So Bob, just what he had been doing in the community and stuff made him interesting. I mean, being the mayor, being on the city council, you got information about what was going on in the community from him.
Yes.
That was interesting, yeah.
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 Yeah, he was a great connection to the entire rest of the city. Okay. And his wife played violin in the Livermore Symphony.
Okay.
And then she came to the band as a drummer, and then she heard me play horn, and she said, "I want to be a horn player." So she became a horn player by an interesting series of studies.
Yeah. Anybody else in Pleasanton in the band that I might not know is in the band or had been in the band? I mean, some of the notorious people from Pleasanton?
Oh boy. The first president of the band played E-flat clarinet, and I think he was a realtor, but names are not coming quickly. There was a chiropractor in town who played one of the original members. Again.
Yeah.
So.
And how many people make up the band? I'm sure it varies at times.
It varies. At its high point, we have about 70 names on the list.
Okay.
And they come to rehearsals when they can. They agree to play a concert if the date is open to them. So we get 45 or 50 players at a concert, drawn from the
70 or so.
The 70.
Okay.
Since most of our rehearsing has been at Pleasanton Middle School, we moved from Amador High School when their band room got knocked down and disappeared, and Pleasanton Middle School got built. So we moved to Pleasanton, and the band room there won't support more than 50, 55.
Oh.
Maybe you could squeeze 60 adults in there,
okay.
But it's not adult community band friendly.
Now, as things have changed a bit in 50 years since you joined the band, and more women are in the workforce as well as the men in families, are you finding it harder to recruit members because of work that people might be doing, or is that not the case?
It's not the case as I see it. We still have enough people who are retired and ready to play full time.
Okay.
We have employed people in their 30s, 40s, and 50s who insist on having music in their life.
Good.
And that's what we find is our core.
Okay.
So no, recruitment is seldom a problem.
Okay.
Retention is seldom a problem.
Good. Okay. So because I know that music for a bit was kind of, the schools weren't pushing it as much. And now then we started, I was a member of Pleasanton Cultural Arts Council. We gave money to elementary schools to start an elementary strings.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And so and I know Pleasanton has always been very strong at their high school levels with their bands.
True.
Yeah. But you mentioned in Oakland, so what was the change in Oakland? Were they not teaching music anymore or not?
Well, in the 70s, they were running out of money and looking for ways to cut. And music was a program that they could decrease the size of.
Okay.
They retained it in the high schools and some of the junior high schools, but the elementary schools were shut down for a couple of years.
Okay.
It came back, and I haven't followed it because I don't have a reason to.
Right.
But my understanding is that it has returned to an extent that it still exists.
Okay. Okay. So do you have any stories about any concerts or any activities that went on that you'd like to talk about that were meaningful or funny or?
Oh my. Well, we are called the Pleasanton Community Concert Band because we do not march. There was a year that some group in Livermore asked us to play and give a concert at some location, but in order to get to that location, they wanted us to parade a bit through downtown.
Okay.
And well, we didn't, there wasn't a street that was open, but there were sidewalks. So we paraded single file and 2 by 2, 30-some people strung out in a long line, trying to play their instruments as they strolled along the sidewalks. And it was a fiasco.
I bet.
And I think it was shortly after that that the name got changed.
Okay.
So that no one would ever ask us
To march.
to march again.
Okay. That's a good story.
That was a funny time.
Yeah.
We had many players in the first several years who were armed forces retirees or former armed forces bandsmen.
Okay.
So the problem was to not be as regimented as they wanted it to be, that it wouldn't turn off the non-service people. But then it was interesting, during Desert Storm, when the 291st Band at Camp Parks was activated, they became full-time soldiers, and they had to change their lives and come to Camp Parks and live, and they had a band, at least 35 people. It was a good table of organization and equipment, Army band, and they decided that it would be nice if we could combine for some concerts and make a real good 70-something piece band. So for at least a year, they rehearsed with us on Thursday nights, and many of us rehearsed with them on Saturdays, and we gave at least 2 concerts in the park on Friday evenings, and that was a real high point to get that many people, and all of them serious musicians.
Yeah.
It crowded the band room at Pleasanton Middle School, but it was worth it, musically speaking. And we got to know a lot of good musicians, had some interesting connections. When I said that we played a Friday night concert in Wayside Park, in the late 70s, I want to say, very late 70s or very early 80s, when Pat Lane inaugurated the Friday night concerts in the park. She was Pleasanton Downtown Association.
And so she started the concerts.
Right.
Oh, okay.
And when she started it, her major premise was, we're going to highlight local people. So the first 3 concerts every June were Foothill High School, Amador High School, Pleasanton Community Band.
Yes.
And that's how every season started for a couple of years. And then I don't know if it was because Pat lane left or what else happened. But then there were so many musical organizations wanted to play that they found they probably had 25 applicants and only 15. So they cut out the school bands, saying, well, that's the end of the school year. They don't need to show off it. The community band, well, they can play a concert anytime. So we don't anymore. Although the Cool Tones do. They just played, a week or two ago. The Cool Tones began because many years ago, the Pleasanton Community Band gave a couple concerts in which we played a new series of pieces that we found that included concert band with a dance band combo soloist.
Oh.
So the band played it, and then this combo played, and then the two voices played together, and the people that were in that combo said to themselves, that was fun. It was nice to play a combo without the band or with. So the Cool Tones became a separate organization.
Okay.
It grew out of us, and we very happily have followed them all these years.
And who is in the Cool Tones?
Who was?
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Started. Do you remember?
Well, many of them still are.
Yeah.
Les Duman
Yeah.
and John Elliott and Chris Lawson. And over the years, let's see, there was that tuba player, piano tuner. Oh my!
That's okay.
I should have
Yeah.
limitless rosters in front of me, and then I could remember all these names.
So did any other groups grow out of the band?
I don't know that they grew out of. The Valley Brass was an organization for many years that was started by Frank Jensen, who was a Amador High School graduate, and his brother Norman, and they wanted to play brass ensembles. So he started a brass ensemble, which may have been a quartet or a quintet at first, but then it grew, and there were a lot of members from the band that played with them. And so the Valley Brass Ensemble was an offshoot of the band, but I can't say that we were responsible for it, because they may have been in existence the same time or just a little before the band started.
Okay.
But they were gone for many, many years, up until into the 2000s, and then several of us had to leave it because of other responsibilities, and I don't know what shape it's in right now.
Okay.
I've lost it.
Now, you joined when the band was like 6 months old. Are you correct? You joined the band when it was about 6 months old?
Yes, during its first year.
So are you the oldest member of the band? Have you been with the band the longest of anybody, or is there anybody else in the band with your length of time?
I think the only other member who's been connected with the band for that many years is Yvonne Grielich, who's a clarinet player. She has not played with us for the last couple of months, but she was an early member of the band and then took time out to raise a family.
Okay.
And then came back. Yvonne was responsible for a very enjoyable period. In 2000, was that was our 25th. Yeah, our 25th anniversary, 2000. We were trying to find some California composers that we could highlight. We had Art Barnes write a piece for us, so we have a commission work from that year. And we discovered a march by Edward MacDonald Keller. It just happened to turn up in the archives of our library. And when we played it, Yvonne, with her clarinet in hand, said, "I know that march. It was written for my school."
Oh, no.
She grew up in.
Oh.
Now I'm gonna say Petaluma again, but anyway.
But in this area anyway.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. She was going to high school there, and Keller came to the school and wrote this march for her school. And here it turned up again. So she turned me on to Keller as a composer, and we got in touch with Sonoma State, which is the archive of all of Keller's compositions that they could. He gave them all to Sonoma State when he retired. So we found a whole library of Keller music. We discovered he had 3 daughters. 2 of them were still local, and we met one of them. And he had a son living in Palo Alto. So we got in touch with the whole family so that we could get permission to record the Keller music, which we did on a CD that year. But contacting the family and learning about Keller, all because of Yvonne, that was an enjoyable trip.
Yeah.
And that year, our 25th, my son came down from Sacramento to be the MC at our anniversary spring concert, and that was a high point. 25 years, well,
Yeah.
we made it.
And he's very good at being an MC. I heard him, give the speech for you at the Patriot thing, and he was very good.
Yeah, he ad-libs well.
He does.
And in that case, he knew the subject well. So, but no, I won't give any commercials for him.
But he's your one and only?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, he had 2 stepsisters that came with his mother when she and I got married. But no, they only lived with me and him for a while, and then they moved on, and they're grown, and so is he.
Yep. Yeah. So, a question. If somebody gets to not be very good at playing their instrument anymore, I mean, some of your people are aging. What happens? Do they usually recognize it, or?
Yes.
They do. Okay.
Yes. When it becomes uncomfortable to play, or they realize uncomfortable because they can't play the notes anymore, or they play them badly, or they're running out of breath, yes. Then they will say, "I can't do it anymore."
Okay.
In my case with the symphony, it was more work to maintain an embouchure and be able to play anything they put in front of me, as I always did. It became more of a chore to stay in shape to play than I was able to do enjoyably.
Okay.
So I still have a horn. Yeah, at one time I had 9 of them, and I still have one, which I play occasionally. And I have feeling that the band will find times when there's another conductor and there's a horn part that's not being played, and I'll attempt it.
Okay. So that's good. So people recognize it for themselves.
Yes, yeah. We have never had to say to someone, you're no good anymore, go away.
Yeah.
They've done it themselves. And I
Yeah.
think that's because the band plays with such a high level of excellence
Okay.
that it's easy for someone to notice that they're not at that same level anymore. So I'll become a listener.
Yeah. 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 Okay. So any other, so you've talked about a couple of times where in the band's history where it's been interesting. Do you have any other stories of anybody else in the band or any other people that you might have played in front of or opportunities that you had?
With the band. Well,
Or the symphony or whatever in your life, yeah.
well, a funny thing that happened
Okay.
with the band, we used to play every year at the fair, the county fair. The night before the fair opens is usually a gala meeting of some kind, and the stage, I don't know what they call the stage anymore, but there was a stage where they always had performance, and for a couple of years we gave concerts on the gala opening. I remember I had to buy a white tux jacket, so I would look formal.
Okay.
And so that was always fun to play. And then years also, we were invited to play a concert during the fair, during the daytime. And there was always a variety of venues. The Valley Brass used to do that too. There was one venue in front of the old museum.
Oh.
There was a bandstand, and Valley Brass used to play there, and the band played there a couple times. And then the band played, they set up other stages closer to the animals. And then there was one year that they had 3 stages set up in close proximity. And they had the Pleasanton band playing at one of them, and at the same time, there was a country western group here, and there was a dance group over there, and it became a cacophony. It was the last time we ever played there. When we were asked again if we would like to, we said, no, we're booked up, we can't make it. But that was horrendous.
Yes, that would be hard to hear yourself play with all the other.
Exactly. And there was no way that they would take turns. Everybody wanted to be going all at once. And we played some interesting time. Pleasanton Downtown Association had various functions when they would want the band. Sometimes we would play on a bandstand right out in the middle. And I know one time we were on a bandstand that was hidden behind, well, in that parking lot behind behind Vic's.
Oh, okay.
They hid a bandstand there, and we gave a concert to people that were just milling about or walking through. But it was now our greatest fun is the Pleasanton Farmers Market. They were quick to grab a hold of us. Pat Lane was responsible for that.
Yeah.
He said the band should be playing at a farmers market. So twice a year we still do it because there's always room to set up the whole band. And there's always a couple of hours that people are milling about, or they'll stop and listen. So, well, and again, and the Cool Tones, they always follow us by a week or two. But those have always been highlights. And when Pat Lane was in charge and she asked, will the band play at the Saturday market? I said, sure. I found a piece of music written by some British composer, called the Saturday Market Overture.
Okay.
So for the first 4 years that we had it, every time we played, we did the Saturday Market Overture. That kind of grew old, so we don't do it regularly, but we still have it in the book.
Yeah, Pat was a wonderful person for promoting your band, and right? She,
Yes.
yeah, provided you opportunities to perform.
Yes, Charlotte Severin calls herself the mother of the band, and I don't know, Pat never gave herself a relationship name, but she certainly was a supporter.
Yeah, yeah. So who else in Pleasanton have you gotten some special memories of that you would say in your life you were glad to meet them?
Oh, well, Ed Kinney was certainly, after Bob Butler, who was politically, I met Ed Kinney because they started 4th of July in the park.
Yes.
But it wasn't a concert. It was a celebration, 4th of July. And Ed Kinney was the MC, and he was an original member of the planning committee. Ed, Ron Sutton, Ward Belding.
Jerry Long?
No, she was not an original.
Not the original.
But she came on quickly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I should end Jerry Long, and now Ken McDonald, and
Yeah.
there was another MC that we had, but that was later. Anyway, I met Ed going to meetings, planning the 4th of July, and that's a character that you just immediately learn to love, and he did such a good job of helping us to plan, and then of course he was the MC, and he made every festival come to life. But I guess it was the 3rd year that they had 4th of July. They invited the band to play, and but the stage, the Wayside Park stage, bandstand was being used for other shows, other acts. So we set up our own big tent over in the grass beside, and that's where we played the first year or two. And then they decided, well, let's make it more of a concert. And then they invited me to be, when Ed passed on, they invited me to be the chairman of the committee. So I've been kind of making it be a concert with additional acts ever since. But yeah, well, and immediately after Ed, Ron Sutton is a character that
Yes.
that you have to appreciate. You have to love him as a community patriot.
Organizer. He's done so much.
Yes.
Yes.
And I'm not wearing it, but he's also responsible for the Acca-Split walk
Yes.
that I have. And then Jerry Long. So Jerry, Ron, and I have been working so close together for many years. They're all special people.
And then Ward Belding was Uncle Sam.
Right. Ward, and as a singer, he was first rate. In fact, he also sang with several other local choral groups outside of Pleasanton, and there was one of them that met in Walnut Creek, not quite Walnut Creek, Lafayette. They rehearsed in a church up there, and he called me one day and he said, "We're doing this piece of music by Bach, and it needs a horn obligato, and the part's written. We just need a horn player." So I went up, and there was another horn player that came along. So we did some some Bach choral works with two horn accompaniments, and that was a real kick. And that was all Ward's fault.
Yeah, he was a good man.
He was.
Yeah, and looked like Uncle Sam
Yes, indeed.
with his long, lean body. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you realize that the uniform he wore, the Uncle Sam suit, had been made for him by his mother when he was much younger.
Yes.
And here, 30 years later, he's still
wearing it.
So not like some of us.
Not many of us can say that.
Right.
Yes, yeah. He was amazing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. When my dad came out of the Navy, I used to be able to wear his uniform. That was 20 pounds ago. So.
Yeah. So yeah, you, I mean, Ed and Ron and Ward were all very, Bob Butler were all very
and
instrumental in helping Pleasanton
yes,
grow and develop.
And Ken,
McDonald?
the sports part.
Oh, Ken Mercer.
Ken Mercer. Ken Mercer was a good supporter of the band. And Brad Hurst.
Brad Hurst.
There used to be a Bill Hurst that played clarinet in the band.
Oh. Was he a relation?
I don't think so. I think Bill Hurst was H-I-R-S-T.
Yes.
Is Brad H-U?
Oh, no, Brad is H-I-R-S-T.
Okay. They could have been related.
Yeah.
And early in the first couple of years, we got a lot of monetary support from Richards Lumber, Tom Richards.
Oh, okay.
Bob Butler made a connection there.
Yeah.
There's many famous names that I've run across and dealt with and enjoyed, but unless you suggest, my memory is aged.
Yeah, yeah. But your stories are great. Those things that you've related about, the people that you know and what they did. And,
Yeah.
yeah. Because the 4th of July celebration is really a nice one. And it's nice for a community to have something like that.
Yes.
Yeah. And have you always had an interest in history growing up close to Valley Forge? Did that kind of...
Well, definitely. And the fact that my mother's family, the family name is Honeyman. And if you check the literature, there are references to a person called General Washington's spy. And that was my great John Honeyman.
How do you spell that?
Honeyman.
Oh,
Honeyman.
okay.
And and my grandfather Honeyman was a history buff because he was interested in John and where things, and when he was searching for John's family, he found that the first Honeyman ever mentioned was a bishop of Orkney, Scotland.
Oh.
So in the writings since 1450, there have been lots of Honeymans that I've become aware of.
Yes.
And John is one of the high points in him. And for that reason, my mother could have been a member of the Daughters of American Revolution.
Yes.
But she never joined. She was not a joiner.
Okay.
Okay. The Honeymans merged at some point with the Huntsbergers. So my mother's father was a Honeyman. My mother's mother was a Huntsberger. And the Huntsbergers have 3 volumes of family history going back to the late 17th century, when the first 3 Honeyman brothers came to this country. And I have the volumes that I can trace everything that came down.
Wow.
So I know all the Huntsbergers and where they joined with all the Honeymans. And I just came interested because my family did that. So I thought, it's fun.
It is fun.
Ancestry.com, I was way ahead of them. And now they've caught up with me, so I have interrupted my association with them. I don't need them anymore.
Okay.
And a side point, nobody will be offended. In tracing the Huntsbergers and the Honeymans, and then bringing in the Williams family, which really was Heffentregers and Metzes, there was a point when a Huntsberger married a Metz. 2 generations later, my mother, the Honeyman, and my father, the Heffentreger, got married. They were third cousins.
Oh.
And they didn't know that.
And they didn't know it.
Until I told my mother about 10 years ago. And she said, isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? So, but that's stuff. If you dig back in your family, you find these things.
Yes.
I love finding your roots on TV.
I do too.
I wish he'd do me, but I already know. I'd say 75% of what he would find.
What nationalities?
Well, they would ethnicity.
Yeah, what ethnicity?
They would be German, Dutch, Swiss, and Scotch.
Okay.
And I drink them all.
Okay. Yeah, that's. What is your clan name in Scotland?
Oh, the clan is Honeyman.
Oh, there's a Honeyman clan.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I don't know anything about it. I've never seen local ones, but that's it.
Okay. Okay.
And,
so you've always been a history buff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just saying. Name. The Scottish lady, Haugen, Juanita Haugen. She was as Scotch as they come, apparently, because whenever the Scottish games were on, she was. And I don't know, Heather and I have never talked about how Scottish she is.
Yeah.
But
you'll have to talk about that sometime.
Yeah.
We're Scottish too. The Burkes and the Forsyths are the clans.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Irish. You know, they were pretty close.
Yes.
Across the water. So, yeah. So, but it is interesting to find out your ethnicity and those family stories.
Yeah. It's funny though. My son has no interest whatsoever.
Oh.
He's such a right now person. He knows what's going on now. I don't really need to know who was my great-great-great-great-grandfather. And I can respect that.
Okay, I was going to say, do you think that's a difference in the change with younger people today, or that's just the way he is?
I think it's more a personality
thing.
The way people grow.
Okay.
And he may have seen me doing it and it turned him off. I don't know.
So you have mentioned a lot of people that you knew in Pleasanton during your time here. There was one person that you could bring into this room right now and visit with. Who would it be?
Wow. there's no one
Okay.
who jumps out.
Okay.
There's too many.
Too many that you'd like to visit with again.
And there's names going around in my head that I'm not going to just spit them out because they're people that I've met and enjoyed, and I know, But one person that I would want to call back and talk to, no, I've already mentioned all of my acquaintances and heroes.
Okay. All right. Is there anything else you'd like to talk about, Bob? Otherwise, I think we can end our little visit today.
Well, we didn't mention that when my son was growing up, he was a little leaguer for many years.
Okay.
And Pleasanton Little League was several years of my life of enjoyment for my son and for me. And one of the stepdaughters played softball. And interesting, a couple weeks ago there was a obituary in the Livermore paper for Pat Lane.
Yes.
And in the same issue was Lynn Gillow, Chuck Gillow's wife. And I knew Chuck through girls soccer and girls softball. And names like that they come up and say, yeah, that was a good point. I enjoyed that.
Yeah. Yeah. So you've got lots of good memories.
Oh, I do.
Yeah. And still love Pleasanton?
Oh, you could not drag me away. I will be here as long as I can walk, as long as I can breathe. Yeah, I keep getting calls from real estate people. Are you interested in selling your house? And I always say, never. I think, I guess somehow they find out that I'm old.
Oh, and they think you're ready to move on, but you're not ready to move on.
No.
Okay.
So.
That's wonderful. All right, well, thank you so much, Bob.
Before we end, may I ask a couple questions?
Oh, sure.
I'm just going to move over here. Just pretend that she's the one asking the question.
Okay.
So, we moved here late 80s, but if I remember correctly, you moved here in the early 70s, right?
72.
You've been here a while, and you have been very active with the town. It's kind of wonderful to hear your opinion on this. What would you say is the big difference between what Pleasanton was then and what it's become now? How would you describe that?
Oh, my. Slightly more crowded, many more activities. The sports program is just taken over weekends, and look at the parks that we have created.
Yes.
Traffic. What Ken Mercer used to say, he remembers when there was one traffic light in town. Well, that one isn't even there anymore. But now there are 9 of them between the freeway and downtown on Hop Yard Road, which Ken used to call Stop Yard Road.
Because it was all stop signs.
Go stop, go stop, go stop. It's bigger. There are more people, but it doesn't feel crowded. As it grew in a way that you're not on top of anybody. And I love the fact that there's not many 3-story buildings. Not only do they not need a fire hook and ladder, well, they have one, but I think they got it because Livermore has 5-story buildings. It's still a small town feel, even though it's a bigger city, instead of one rotary, there's now three. What we don't have, we used to have Pleasanton Times newspaper.
Yeah.
I remember 1972, my son was almost 2 years old, and he was taking swimming lessons. I was helping him learn to swim at the aquatic center, which had just opened, and his teacher was Dolores Bankston.
Oh.
And we got our picture in the
the
Pleasanton Times, me holding my son in the pool. That was a high point for 50 years ago. But it's bigger, it's busier, but it's not crowded, and it's still a small town feel.
And you can still run into people you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One other
Good.
question for you, if you don't mind. I will refer to this question as the taxi cab question.
Oh, what?
The taxi cab question.
Okay.
Let's pretend that after we all leave here, for whatever reason, your car isn't working, you have to take a cab home. And the cabbie who's driving you is really chatty, wants to hear about your day, what you've done, and you say you came to the museum to talk about your time living here in Pleasanton, and the cabbie's not from this area, so they listen to you and then they just say, I don't get it. Why would you want to live in a town like Pleasanton for 50 years? And they're not being a jerk. They just never heard of the town. They don't understand why. In the length of a short car ride, how would you explain to someone who's never been to this town, who's never even heard of it before, what made it so special to you? And you answer it to her if you don't mind.
But the opportunities to enjoy life are all here. That's why I came, that's why I've stayed. Every opportunity for enjoying being alive is here. Great people, good social atmosphere, opportunities for sports, opportunities for culture. And you could buy anything you want without even calling Amazon. What would be your ideal hometown? A place where you were comfortable every moment, and with everything that you do, just walking for exercise, shopping, going out to eat. It's all here. It's a perfect hometown.
Yeah.
I grew up in a town that was 40,000 people tops. And now when I moved to Pleasanton, it was only, 25,000. And now it's double the 40 that I grew up in. But it still has the same comfortable feeling that it did in 1972.
Well, that's wonderful. You feel that way. Yeah, that's great. Okay, well, thank you so much, Bob.
My pleasure.
Yes, it's
I
been.
could probably sit here and talk longer and find more ridiculous things to say, but
No rush.
Okay, what time is it? Okay, 4:30?
3:30. I told
3:30.
Sam to come here and meet us.
Do you have some more, did you think of something more?
no, I didn't.
Oh,
I would need more prompts.
but we can get together again another time if there's some things you want to talk about, Bob. If you think, I really would like to talk about this or that.
At the moment, nothing
Okay.
pops up and says, you missed this.
But if there is, we can do it again, right, Michael? Yeah. I liked when you're mentioning all the names and,
Yeah.
a lot of good people.
Yeah, well, there's 18 years at Valecitos that they just went by, and I've never thought about discussing what I did or what I enjoyed or what I didn't like about that, because it was just something I had to do. I didn't go to work there because I was called, like I did to teaching, like I did to the band, like I did to music. I went there because I needed a job and someone suggested it, and I found it enjoyable, and I could adapt what I already knew about life and the world to giving them the results they wanted from my efforts.
Yeah.
But
And Bob, you don't get paid for, do you get paid for being the conductor in the band?
no, that's an interesting side. The band started as an entirely voluntary. Even though it was adult education, they didn't charge us for being adult education members. We didn't have to pay a fee, but then we didn't get paid. Then, after a couple years, adult education cut us loose, and we became a 501c3. Still, nobody's getting paid, but nobody's paying dues. It's still entirely voluntary. Then adult education somehow got regrouped or reorganized, and it was suggested that the band might become an adult education class, and it might help the band recruit and do other things. So Glenn Sparks, did I get that whole name? Who was the director of adult ed, he agreed to that, and he brought us on as a class without paying dues, but they would pay me, and instead of dues, the band would reimburse adult ed for whatever they paid me. So,
Okay.
yeah, it convoluted.
Yeah.
And it may not be exactly as I remember. But so for a year or two, I got paid for every rehearsal and every concert, and it amounted to something like $4,000 a year I was getting paid for being the band conductor. But my deal with the band was, I'll give it back.
Okay. And what did they do with it?
They reimbursed adult ed.
Oh. Okay.
So that was the only time anybody got paid for doing it.
Okay.
And well,
All been a matter of your heart and your interest that you did it. You did it out of the,
oh yeah. I never wanted to get paid for it.
yeah.
I never played in a community band where I had to pay or where the conductor got paid, except when there were union bands back in Pennsylvania, because the union, through the trust fund, would pay. And in upstate New York, I played for 2 different fire company bands, and we would parade, and when we played a parade or a carnival, we would get paid like $10 for doing the gig, and $10, that was 3 beers and 3 orders of steamed clams. That's how I got paid.
Okay.
So, but now why did I go off on that tangent? I don't know. Oh no. So the band exists because friends of the band make donations. People who come to our concerts make donations. Some organizations that we play for give us an honorarium. And many of us who can afford it buy things for the band and make gifts to the band. So to me, it's never been a paying condition,
Yeah.
but that's okay. I can afford it, the time, the energy, the money, the band. I'll keep it going, whatever I have to do.
Yeah. Music has really been a big part of your life.
Oh, it's been the reason I wake up most mornings ever since I was 12.
Wow.
Well, maybe before that, because I spent 5 or 6 years before that practicing piano. And so I would get up to practice piano and then go to school and then come home and practice some more. And then I discovered a trumpet. So then I played less piano and more trumpet. And then I found youth bands at the YMCA or some other organization. So it would be practice piano, go to school, come home, warm up the trumpet, go to a rehearsal, band rehearsal. I played in Germantown Youth Orchestra and a couple of small young people's bands in Pennsylvania. When I was in high school and playing in in the Norristown band, which was a community band, there was a guy in there who had a huge library that he had amassed of music for all kinds of instruments, ensembles. And he had a farm, and on the farm was a nice barn. So a couple Sundays every summer, he would invite all the friends that he knew from band, community orchestra, come to his barn, and we'll just pass out music and play it. So he said, for 3 or 4 or 5 hours, you're just reading music that some of it you've never heard of, some of it you heard of and you never had a chance to play. And that's an educational experience that
Yeah.
I couldn't have bought.
Yeah.
I probably learned more literature in that 1 or 2 summers that happened than I did in any of my formal education.
And your formal education was in music?
Always.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yes, my bachelor's degree is BSME, Bachelor of Science in Music Education.
Okay.
So there's a lot of science and there was a lot of education and a lot of music.
Yeah.
So it was a 3-point. And I felt like I could have worn one of my shirts that has the logo of one of my universities, but no, I decided this was better.
Okay.
Yeah, and I still say, whenever anybody says anything to me about my life, I say, the only reason I wake up is so I can do something musical. That's it. It's what makes
And
me
it's more playing or listening?
both.
Both.
You will open my front door, you will hear music playing. The greatest, well, since LP records and turntables with stacks, the greatest thing since then has been on television, music choice.
Yes.
Channel 949. I wake up, my son goes off the air, Channel 949 comes on, and it will play until some news or some other program I want to see comes on. And when I go to bed at night, I make sure that the news is done, 949 is programmed to start the next day. Open my front door, it will always be music playing.
And that is very calming to you, what does it do for your soul?
Oh, it feeds me.
It feeds your soul.
That's the food. Yeah. That's the food of love is the music that I hear. And I go to sleep at night with the radio on with KXPR or KDFC, and that runs all night. And if I wake up, I hear something.
So do you have a certain type of music that you like most, or composer, or?
It's 90% classical. There's so much classical music that you can't hear in a lifetime. Why bother with anything else? And in classical music, there's always an outgrowth of some of the folk music that grew into a classic, that you don't need to listen to a rapper. You can listen to Carmina Burana, which is just as, or Carlos Chavez, or It's Coming. Well, anyway, yes, it's 90% classical, but even in the classical, you listen to Aaron Copland, and you hear country western. So
Yeah, the music from, again, it kind of blends your two together, your history and your music, because so much of the folk songs, like you say, then developed into something more, and the folk songs and stuff came from the past,
right,
from your ancestors.
right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, all right. Any other questions, Mike, that you might have?